Some pubs in South Australia opened their doors for the first time in 2 months last night, less than an hour after restrictions were lifted. Live to Emily Burley in Adelaide. And Emily, a last-minute decision brought on by a day of confusion.
That's right. We did hear earlier in the week that South Australian restaurants and cafes would be allowed to reopen for indoor dining on May 22nd, so yesterday, and seat 10 people indoors, another 10 people outdoors, and they would be allowed to serve alcohol with food. But at that time, we heard pubs wouldn't reopen for another 2 weeks on June 5. But yesterday, as restaurants began preparing their food service, a big problem with this change in restrictions became clear. Now, in the fine print, it said only those with restaurant catering licences were allowed to reopen. Restaurants with another kind of liquor licence were not. And what that meant was a number of restaurants across the city and across the state had ordered in food, brought in staff and accepted reservations, only to be shut down before they could even open. Now, unsurprisingly, this caused a lot of confusion and a lot of anger right across the hospitality sector. The Premier, Stephen Marshall, acknowledged that confusion yesterday earlier in the day, but it wasn't until he called a late news conference just before 5 p.m. that he decided to change the rules.
As you can imagine, this has caused some confusion both with businesses and also with diners. Diners don't really know what licence an individual establishment has. And so, to clear up that confusion this afternoon, we are happy to provide a further relaxation of the arrangements in South Australia.
Now, that change meant that all venues with dining capacity in South Australia were allowed to reopen for indoor dining effective immediately. 10 people indoors, another 10 people outdoors, including pubs and hotels. They could also serve alcohol, but only if it was served with food. Now, it didn't take long for some pubs to reopen their doors. As I said, it was a last-minute decision just before 5. The Gilbert Street Hotel here in Adelaide, for example, was open and at capacity within half an hour, but some venues simply didn't have the time. They didn't have the ability to open right away last night. Others will choose not to reopen while capacity is at 20 people in total. It just isn't profitable enough for them. But these restrictions will change again in 2 weeks on June 5 as South Australia moves to the second phase of its road to recovery. We don't know yet what the pub capacity will be at that time. The government says it hasn't made a decision, but we do know the Hotels Association is advocating for 50 people, just like we saw announced for New South Wales yesterday.